Here's what they don't teach you about social warfare. The deadliest attacks aren't the ones that come from your enemies. They're the ones you launch against yourself. Every time someone questions your character, challenges your motives, or attacks your reputation, they're setting a trap. And most people sprint straight into it with their mouths already moving. That's not what I meant. You're completely misunderstanding me. Let me explain what really happened. It feels noble, justified, necessary. But to Machiavelli, it's the exact moment you hand them your throat. You see, defending yourself isn't damage control, it's damage multiplication. When you start explaining your actions, you've already lost the war. You're confessing that their opinion carries weight. You're declaring, without even realizing it, yes, you get to decide my worth. And in power games, perception is the only truth that matters. The moment they see you scramble, they don't see innocence. They smell blood. This is the fatal law Machiavelli decoded. The man who defends himself surrenders his throne. The man who refuses makes others fight for his honor instead. When you justify yourself, you've stepped into their arena, accepted their authority to judge you, and handed them complete control of the narrative. Even when you're absolutely right, you look absolutely guilty because only the insecure feel compelled to explain themselves. But here's what separates the conquered from the conquerors. You don't want clarity. You want control. Clarity is for therapy. Control is for power. The truly powerful let accusations die in silence. They know the superior move. Turn the spotlight back on the accuser. Make them justify their aggression. Make them appear desperate, unhinged, obsessed. Most people are hungry for validation. They think endless explanations will somehow vindicate them. But that hunger comes from emotional desperation, not strategic thinking. Power doesn't flow from being understood, it flows from being feared, respected, and completely untouchable. So when someone brands you calculating, ruthless, dangerous, manipulative, and you immediately fire back with "that's completely unfair," you've already lost everything. Because now you're reactive. Now you're proving they struck a nerve. Now you've put the ball in their court. And when you sacrifice that control, you forfeit the most lethal weapon in your arsenal: complete unpredictability. Think of the most powerful people you've ever encountered. Not the loudest, not the most liked. The ones who held silence like a weapon. The ones who made you second-guess yourself just by staring. The ones who, when attacked, never flinched. Machiavelli understood the mathematics of this phenomenon. He who explains submits. He who remains silent forces others to fill in the blanks. And they always overestimate him. It's psychological warfare at its purest form. When you refuse to react, you create a vacuum that your attacker desperately tries to fill. They start questioning their own approach. Why isn't this working? What do they know that I don't? Am I the one who looks foolish here? That's when their power begins hemorrhaging into yours. Let's go deeper. You walk into a room. Someone throws shade, subtle or direct. Maybe a jab at your success, your attitude, your past. Everyone turns to see what you'll say, and here's your move. Say nothing. No defense, no retaliation, no smirk, just calm, total stillness. In that moment, you are untouchable because everyone in the room is now forced to ask, why didn't he react? Does he know something we don't? Is he above this? Did that attack just make him stronger? You just flipped the entire social frame. Because people aren't watching the accusation. They're watching your response. And silence, when delivered with presence, speaks louder than any justification ever could. Machiavelli knew this. He didn't just study politics. He studied psychology. And he understood one thing better than anyone. Power isn't what you say. It's what people believe you could say, but choose not to. Now, here's the coldest move of all. Sometimes you don't just ignore the accusation. You invert it. Someone calls you manipulative. Smile, look past them, and say, if that's how you see it. Not defensive, not apologetic, just cool, neutral detachment. What happens? They scramble because they were hoping for a fight. They were hoping to watch you squirm. Instead, they're left holding their own weapon. That's when the guilt sets in on their side. They start wondering if they overstepped, if they embarrassed themselves, if they look insecure now. And guess what? They do. You just took the energy they threw at you and made them carry it without lifting a finger. Here's what happens when you refuse to break. The person who launched the attack starts to feel the weight of their own aggression. They expected pushback, emotion, defensiveness, the normal human responses that would justify their assault. Instead, they got stone-cold nothing. And that nothing becomes a mirror reflecting their own desperation back at them. Suddenly, they're not the prosecutor anymore. They're the one begging for validation, scrambling for a reaction, exposing themselves as someone who needs your emotional response to feel relevant. This is the moment you transition from target to apex predator. You become something far more dangerous than vindicated. You become unreachable. Machiavelli cracked the code on human psychology centuries ago. Words aren't weapons of truth. They're instruments of confusion. When someone baits you into verbal combat, they're not seeking clarity. They're hunting for blood. They want to watch you drown in justifications because every word you speak in defense makes you appear less certain, less powerful, less in control. So here's the counter-strategy. Let them fill the void. Watch what unfolds. They escalate. They repeat their attack with more intensity. They start sounding increasingly unhinged. You remain silent, but now they're the one being dissected by every observer in the room. Because audiences don't judge content. They judge composure. That's the brutal truth about social dynamics. It doesn't matter who's factually correct. It matters who maintains emotional control. There's a deeper tactic, and it's even colder. Don't just remain calm when accused. Disappear. Someone insults you, don't reply. Don't respond. Don't acknowledge. But don't block them either. Let your absence sit like a mirror. Let them sit in the silence of being ignored. This breaks people in two ways. They realize you didn't even deem them worthy of a response. They start spinning internal narratives, and most of the time it destroys their composure. Why? Because the average person survives on emotional validation. Even in conflict, if you take that away, they wither. They spiral. They post more. They talk to others. They try to bait a reply. And with every new attempt, they look weaker, more obsessed, more unhinged. All while you remain perfectly still. And that's when you win. Not because you proved anything, but because they destroyed themselves trying to get a reaction from you. Here's where it gets elite. Instead of defending yourself when attacked, make their accusation look like a sign of weakness. Someone calls you arrogant. Strange that confidence makes people so uncomfortable. Someone says you're manipulative. Only people who can't be influenced say that. Someone calls you fake. Everyone says that when they stop getting what they want. You don't just deny the accusation. You make it their insecurity. And now they're the ones scrambling to defend themselves. It's not just a reversal. It's a power judo throw. You used their own emotional force and turned it into their public collapse. Machiavelli would call this the turn of the blade. Do not meet the sword with a shield. Let the attacker fall on his own blade. The world teaches you to defend your reputation, to explain yourself, to clear your name. But Machiavelli saw the trap. He knew that the moment you chase innocence, you admit guilt. So the true strategist never plays that game. Instead, he appears too composed to be shaken, too elevated to care, too clear on his position to explain it. And slowly, Those who try to tear him down start looking unstable, reactive, jealous, weak. Because the more you defend, the more it looks like you need to. But the more you ignore, the more dangerous they assume you are. And that assumption is where power is born. Most people think power is about proving yourself. Proving you're right, proving you're not what they say you are. Proving you're better than their perception. But Machiavelli would smirk at this because the second you try to prove anything, you've already declared the other person's judgment valid. And when you hand someone that validation, you hand them your leash. In the digital arena, things escalate even faster. Comments, posts, callouts, DMs, people trying to bait you into reacting. Here's the truth Machiavelli would burn into your mind. In the court of public opinion, silence speaks guilt unless your silence commands fear. So here's the tactic. When you're attacked online, don't defend. Don't explain. Distort. You don't address the claim. You redirect the energy back into the crowd. Example. Someone says you're toxic or manipulative. Instead of posting a tearful defense or long clarification, you post, "People always call you dangerous when they can't control you. What just happened? You didn't defend. You reframed the accusation into a badge of power. Now they look bitter. You look unfazed. And the audience, they begin to question who's really in control. That's not damage control. That's narrative dominance. The Machiavellian never begs to be seen as good. He dares people to see him as bad and walks taller for it. When you refuse to defend yourself, something strange happens to your enemies. They become unhinged because they expected a battle, and instead they're swinging at smoke. They start escalating. They push harder. They get more dramatic. They expose more of their insecurity. And the more they do, the more you rise in the eyes of others. Why? Because you've made them perform their own collapse. And that's the Machiavellian endgame. You don't destroy your enemies. You let their obsession with you destroy them. You think being misunderstood is dangerous. But being predictable is far worse. The misunderstood man has mystery. The predictable man is easy to manipulate. People who are always trying to clear things up are seen as desperate. People who remain calmly misunderstood, they are feared. Machiavelli knew this. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But even more, it's better to be confusing than predictable. Because the confused man is cautious. He watches you. He doesn't act rashly. And that means you control the field. Let's crush the final illusion. You don't need a good reputation to win. You need a strong one. The man with a good reputation is expected to be clean, soft, agreeable. The man with a strong reputation, he's not always liked. He's not always trusted. But no one dares move against him casually. That's what happens when you never defend yourself. Your reputation becomes not about what people believe, but what they fear you'll do next. That's how you flip the power. You stop fighting for approval. And instead, you create an aura that makes people cautious. Because even your silence feels like a decision. And every move you don't make becomes a move in their mind. The final evolution is not silence. It's aura. A presence so composed, so secure, so far above the petty noise that accusations simply evaporate before they land. And this doesn't come from being emotionless. It comes from being unbothered by design. Because once you've trained yourself not to defend, not to explain, not to seek validation, you cross a line. A line where your existence becomes the defense. And that's when power becomes effortless. Think about the few people in life who never explain themselves. They don't post long rants. They don't correct the record. They don't argue with critics. And yet, people respect them more. Why? Because silence in the face of accusation creates myth. It invites interpretation. And the human mind, when left without an explanation, fills the void with strength. People assume you must be dangerous. You must know something they don't. You must be so secure in who you are that you don't even blink when challenged. And that assumption, that's what makes people follow you. Machiavelli didn't care about being good. He cared about being in control. And the one who never defends is always in control of perception, even when surrounded by lies. Here's the paradox. The more you explain yourself, the more alone you look, because no one feels the need to step in when you're already arguing on your own behalf. But if you remain calm, if you stand silent, unfazed, people start to feel the urge to defend you. They say, that was uncalled for. He didn't deserve that. Why are you coming after him? He didn't even respond, and you're still pushing. Suddenly, they become your shield. And what's better than defending yourself? Letting others do it for you without asking. That's Machiavellian leverage. Let the crowd argue your case while you remain above the noise. Now you're not just respected, you're elevated. It doesn't happen overnight. You build it like a fortress, stone by stone. By acting with restraint, by choosing stillness over reaction, by never explaining more than you must. Start here. Never correct insults that are clearly meant to provoke. Let them speak. Let them echo. Your silence tells the room that the insult didn't even register on your radar. Respond to indirect shots with calm confusion, not offense. Is that how you see it? Said with total serenity. It dismantles the emotional energy behind their attack. Use short closing phrases instead of defenses. Noted. Okay. Think what you like. Time will tell. Each one closes the door. It doesn't invite more debate. It ends the scene. Study how you hold your face, your body, your gaze. The Machiavellian never twitches, flinches, or tenses. Stillness is his armor. And the more still you are when others lose control, the more your power expands silently. When people don't know how to provoke you, they fear you because you become unpredictable. Not erratic, but unreadable. A mirror that reflects their own instability back at them. Machiavelli would say, the most dangerous man is not the one who attacks first. It is the one who never needs to. You will reach a point where the attacks stop, not because you fought them, but because people know they'll lose before they start. Your presence says, I don't play defense. I let others destroy themselves while trying to reach me. There is a difference between strength and immunity. Strength still flinches, still reacts, still gets emotional even if it fights back. Immunity, it doesn't even acknowledge the hit. That's the Machiavellian ideal. You don't win the argument. You end the argument before it starts by never needing to answer it. Because when you no longer defend yourself, people stop seeing you as someone who needs to be put on trial. You're not on their level. You've moved beyond the court of public approval. And the only judgment that matters, your own. From this point on, you don't live in defense. You live in definition. You define your image. You define your tone. You define your silence. And people feel that. They feel the certainty behind your eyes, the calmness in your posture, the danger in your quiet. You're not resisting anymore. You're commanding. And that's when the room shifts. The crowd speaks less. Your enemies grow quieter. Your name carries weight. Not because you fought for it, but because you never explained it. Never defending yourself doesn't mean never speaking. It means speaking only when it shifts the power. When you say something, it should feel like a move, not a response. Because every time you don't explain yourself, every time you hold still while the world spins, you become the one thing they can't control. So here's your move. Stop explaining. Start embodying. If this hit you where it matters, drop your thoughts in the comments. Let the others know you're not here to play defense anymore. Hit that subscribe button and like this video. Also share it with someone who needs to stop chasing clarity and start owning control.